The night was colder than usual, the kind of cold that felt alive, crawling through sleeves, biting skin, and turning every breath into a thin cloud of mist. Lena, exhausted after her double shift at the cafe, pulled her coat tighter as she walked the dimly lit street leading to her apartment. Her neighborhood wasn't dangerous, just forgotten. The street lamps flickered with age, the cracked sidewalks held puddles from the day's rain, and every sound echoed a little too loudly. She was thinking of nothing more than taking off her shoes and collapsing onto her bed when she noticed a shadow near her doorstep. Her heart thudded, and she slowed. Many people slept behind her building, she was used to it, but no one ever came to her door. When she got close enough, she saw him. A man hunched beneath a torn brown blanket, knees pulled tightly to his chest, shivering hard enough that the fabric trembled. His hair was soaked from the rain, plastered to his forehead. His cheeks were red with cold, lips cracked and trembling. He looked fragile, like one strong gust of wind might blow him away. Most people in the city walked past sights like this every day. They hurried, they frowned, they pretended not to see. But Lena stopped. She crouched beside him, gently touching his shoulder. "Sir, are you okay?" she whispered, her voice soft but firm. The man flinched at her touch and slowly looked up. His eyes startled her, not because they were frightening, but because they were gentle. Warm, even in the freezing night. He looked at her like he wasn't used to being looked at all. "I'm just cold," he murmured, his voice hoarse. "I'll be fine." No, he wouldn't. Not in this weather. Not like this. Lena glanced around. No one else was outside. No shelters nearby. She could already feel guilt clawing at her if she left him here. She had grown up with little, raised by her grandmother who taught her one rule: kindness is free, give it even when you have nothing else. "Sir, please, come inside," she said, surprising even herself. "Just for tonight. You'll freeze out here." He blinked at her, stunned. "You don't even know me." "I don't have to," she answered simply. He stared at her for a long moment, as if trying to understand her. Then, with slow movements, like every bone hurt, he got up. She noticed he clutched a small backpack, the only thing he owned. Inside, she switched on her heater, helped him sit on the couch, and went straight to the kitchen to warm soup. The man sat still, almost stiff, as if he didn't know how to exist inside a home anymore. "What's your name?" she asked, stirring the pot. "Mark," he said quietly. A simple name, but the way he said it, there was weight behind it. A shadow. "Well, Mark, you're safe here." He looked around her tiny apartment, the mismatched curtains, the wobbly coffee table, the second-hand furniture, and his expression softened. Not with pity, but with something else. Something like gratitude, or disbelief. As Lena handed him a warm bowl, she finally noticed something odd. Despite his ragged clothes, his hands were clean. His manner of speaking polished. His posture straight, too straight for someone who had been on the streets long. But she didn't ask. Everyone had a story. Some stories needed time. And as he ate, slowly, silently, she wondered who he really was. This gentle-eyed stranger who trembled not just from cold, but from something deeper. Tonight, she didn't know she was offering warmth to a man who had once owned skyscrapers. Tonight, she was just being kind. The smell of warm soup filled the small apartment, drifting through the air like a soft blanket. Lena moved quietly in the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel as she glanced at the man sitting stiffly on her couch. Mark looked out of place, not because he seemed dangerous, but because he seemed too polite, too controlled, too aware of every movement he made. Some homeless people collapsed into sleep the moment they saw a bed or couch. Some devoured food like it would disappear. But Mark sat with his back straight, bowl cupped in both hands, eating slowly as if rehearing forgotten manners. "You can relax, you know," Lena said with a small smile. His spoon paused midair. I'm trying." The heater buzzed softly, casting a weak warmth into the room. Outside, rain tapped the windows like impatient fingers. Lena poured herself a cup of tea and sat across from him, studying him quietly. Up close, there were little things she hadn't noticed earlier. The way he spoke with perfect articulation, the slight stiffness in his shoulders, the way his eyes scanned the room as if he was accustomed to assessing spaces, or people. He didn't look like someone who had always been on the streets. He looked like someone who had fallen, and still wasn't sure how to stand back up. How long have you been outside? She asked gently. He lowered his spoon. His jaw tensed. A while. She didn't push. She'd learned long ago that people reveal their pain when they're ready, not when someone demands it. Mark set the empty bowl on the table. Thank you. Really, you didn't have to feed me. I know, she said, sipping her tea. But I wanted to. Something flickered in his expression, something fragile. He leaned his elbows on his knees, staring at his hands like they were strangers. Kindness isn't something I see often anymore. Lena nodded. People are busy, scared, tired. Doesn't mean kindness died, it just hides sometimes. His eyes lifted to hers slowly, carefully. You talk like someone who's been through things. She chuckled softly. Everyone has. But we don't have to bleed on each other. For a long moment, neither spoke. The room hummed with quiet warmth. Then, almost without warning, Mark wiped his face with the back of his hand. Too fast, too subtly. But Lena saw it. A tear. He tried to look away, but she stood and placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. Hey, you're okay? His voice cracked on the edges. No one has sat with me like this, for a very long time. Something inside her chest tightened, not romantic, not pity, just human connection, raw and pure. Sometimes, she whispered, people need a place to land. He nodded, swallowing hard. And you offered me one. She gave him a blanket and pointed toward the small fold-out bed in the corner of the living room. Rest. You'll feel better in the morning. He hesitated, almost embarrassed. Are you sure? I can sleep on the floor. You're sleeping on the bed, she said, hands on her hips, pretending sternness. I insist. A small, genuine smile tugged at his lips, the first she'd seen from him. As he finally lay down, Lena switched off the main light, leaving only a lamp glowing softly. She watched him settle under the covers, eyes drifting closed with a kind of exhaustion that wasn't just physical. When she stepped away, he whispered, barely audible, thank you. Lena. She froze for a second. He had remembered her name even though she'd only said it once. His voice held sincerity that felt almost elegant. Too elegant. Something didn't add up about him, but she decided to worry about it tomorrow. Tonight, kindness was enough. The morning light poured through the cracked blinds, painting the small apartment in soft shades of gold and gray. Lena stretched, yawning as she ran a hand through her messy hair. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the room, blending with the faint smell of the rain that still clung to the city streets. She padded barefoot into the kitchen, expecting Mark to be asleep or gone. Instead, he was standing by the window, looking out at the world beyond her small balcony. There was a strange serenity about him. His posture was straight, commanding even, as if he belonged somewhere much bigger than this tiny apartment. He turned when he heard her step inside, offering her a polite nod. Good morning, he said softly, his voice calm, measured. Morning, Lena replied cautiously, her curiosity tinged with suspicion. He had said very little about himself, yet something about him hinted at a life far beyond the boundaries of her apartment. Mark walked over to the table where her coffee cup waited. He poured himself a cup, moving with a grace that was both effortless and deliberate. He lifted it, inhaled the aroma, and then placed the cup carefully back down as if handling something fragile. Lena studied him silently. There's something I should tell you, he said finally, his tone serious. He paused, as if choosing each word with care. Before you assume anything, I'm not who you think I am. Lena tilted her head, unsure what he meant. You don't have to tell me anything, she said gently, thinking of how vulnerable he had seemed the night before. I think you should know, he continued, taking a deep breath. I have responsibilities, a life far removed from what you see now. And soon, I must return to it. Before Lena could respond, a sharp knock echoed through the apartment. Both of them froze. Another knock, louder this time. Sir, we've been looking for you, a voice called from the other side of the door. Two men in impeccably tailored suits appeared in the doorway, their expressions tense and urgent. The board needs you immediately. It's critical. Lena blinked. Her heart skipped. She looked at Mark. He seemed almost calm, composed, but there was an undercurrent of something powerful lurking beneath the surface. Mark turned to her, eyes locking with hers. I suppose it's time you knew the truth, he said quietly. I am Markson Hale, CEO of Hale Industries. The words hit her like a lightning strike. Hale Industries, billionaire, CEO. Her mind struggled to connect the kind, shivering man she had helped last night with the powerful figure now standing before her. You're the man on the news? She stammered. Her voice trembled with disbelief. He offered a small, rueful smile. Yes, that's me, but last night, I was just a man in need of warmth. I wanted to see the world without the filters of wealth and power, to feel real again, and I didn't expect to find someone like you. Lena's stomach twisted. She had offered a simple act of kindness, inviting a stranger inside on a cold night, and somehow, it had connected her to a man whose life was so far removed from her own. Mark took a step closer, lowering his voice. I wanted no judgment, no pity, just authenticity. That's why I trusted you. Lena's mind raced. Everything she knew about the world, the hierarchy, wealth, power, felt irrelevant in that moment. What mattered was the honesty in his eyes, the sincerity behind his words, and the unexpected bond that had formed between them overnight. You trusted me? She whispered. He nodded, a small, almost shy gesture that seemed incongruent with the image of a billionaire CEO. Yes, and I want to see you again. Not because of who I am, but because of who you are. For the first time, Lena felt a strange flutter of hope mingled with fear. This was not just a man who had been cold and hungry last night. This was someone whose life could change hers forever. And yet, beneath the layers of wealth and power, he was still the man she had saved. The knock at the door grew louder, but Lena barely noticed. She only saw him, the man who had trusted her, and wondered how a single act of kindness could ripple into something unimaginable. The tension in the apartment was palpable as Mark's aides lingered near the door, their eyes darting nervously between him and Lena. Yet, despite the looming obligations of wealth and power, Mark remained calm. His gaze found Lena's, and for a moment, the world outside, the flashing skyscrapers, the board meetings, the empire he commanded, ceased to exist. Lena, he began, his voice low, I think it's only fair I explain everything. He gestured to the men at the door. They've been looking for me all night, and soon they'll find me whether I want them to or not. But before I leave, you deserve the truth. She nodded silently, settling onto the couch, sensing that whatever he was about to reveal would reshape everything she thought she knew about him. I've been through a lot, Mark said carefully, choosing each word like a man stepping through broken glass. Years of building this company, taking over projects, expanding internationally, it all consumes you. You lose touch with reality. With people. You start to live in a world where power and wealth define you, and kindness, well, it becomes optional. Or rare. Lena listened intently, realizing that the man before her, so vulnerable last night, was not defined by his wealth, but by what he had endured to acquire it. I left, he continued, because I needed to remember who I was. I walked away from everything for a week, no phone, no money, no schedule. I wanted to see life stripped down, unfiltered, unguarded. His eyes met hers, shining with sincerity. And yet, even in that solitude, the world often ignores you. Most people pass by, but you stopped. You treated me like a human being, not a story or a headline. Her chest tightened. She had helped him without a second thought, never imagining he could be someone so powerful. Yet the raw honesty in his voice made her realize that what she had done mattered more than she knew. I've spent my life surrounded by people who are polite, strategic, and transactional, Mark continued. But you didn't want anything from me. You didn't ask for recognition or a reward. You offered warmth because it was the right thing to do. That's rare. That's real. Lena felt her heart shift, understanding that this act of kindness, a simple invitation to come inside, had touched him in ways money never could. He paused, swallowing hard. I've been wealthy my entire adult life. I've had cars, houses, trips, everything most people dream of. But last night, I realized I've never felt anything like the connection I felt with you. Not in a boardroom, not in a 5-star hotel. Just being seen. Just being human. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them back. It was one thing to help someone. It was another to see how much it meant. She had made a difference, without even knowing it. Mark's aides shifted uneasily. Sir, the board, one began, but he shook his head. No, Mark said firmly. I will leave soon. But this moment, this is mine. And Lena, I want you to know why I am leaving, and why I need to see you again. Because you are the only person who's seen me without the walls I've built around myself. The weight of his words pressed down on her, and she realized that this man, this billionaire, was no stranger in the way she had assumed. He was someone who had lost everything inside himself, someone who had walked the streets for one night to reclaim his humanity. And now, he said, softer, almost shyly, I want to keep this. I want to keep seeing you, not because I am Markson Hale, the CEO, but because I am Mark, the man who needed a little kindness last night. And you gave it to me. For Lena, the world had shifted again. What began as a cold night, a small act of compassion, had unfolded into a revelation. A man who commanded empires, yet had the humility to weep quietly in her presence, had chosen to trust her, and that trust was more valuable than any fortune. Her heart raced, and she realized that sometimes, even the smallest gestures have the power to change everything. Lena felt her heart shift, understanding that this act of kindness, a simple invitation to come inside, had touched him in ways money never could. He paused, swallowing hard. I've been wealthy my entire adult life. I've had cars, houses, trips, everything most people dream of. But last night, I realized I've never felt anything like the connection I felt with you. Not in a boardroom, not in a five-star hotel. Just being seen. Just being human. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them back. It was one thing to help someone. It was another to see how much it meant. She had made a difference, without even knowing it. Mark's aides shifted uneasily. Sir, the board, one began, but he shook his head. No, Mark said firmly. I will leave soon. But this moment, this is mine. And Lena, I want you to know why I am leaving, and why I need to see you again. Because you are the only person who's seen me without the walls I've built around myself. The weight of his words pressed down on her, and she realized that this man, this billionaire, was no stranger in the way she had assumed. He was someone who had lost everything inside himself, someone who had walked the streets for one night to reclaim his humanity. And now, he said, softer, almost shyly, I want to keep this. I want to keep seeing you, not because I am Markson Hale, the CEO, but because I am Mark, the man who needed a little kindness last night. And you gave it to me. For Lena, the world had shifted again. What began as a cold night, a small act of compassion, had unfolded into a revelation. A man who commanded empires, yet had the humility to weep quietly in her presence, had chosen to trust her, and that trust was more valuable than any fortune. Her heart raced, and she realized that sometimes, even the smallest gestures have the power to change everything. He stepped closer, and Lena noticed the subtleties, the slight tremor in his hands, the nervous lift of his brow, the way his eyes searched hers not for a deal, but for understanding. I can't promise this will be easy, he admitted. My life is complicated. My responsibilities are enormous. But I can promise this. I will never take your kindness for granted. I will never treat you like anything less than the extraordinary person you are. Lena's chest tightened. The sincerity in his words, the vulnerability masked beneath his commanding presence, left her speechless. For the first time, she felt seen, not as a helper, not as a charity, not as a passerby, but as a person whose choices, whose heart, truly mattered. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Her voice quivered, caught between fear and hope. Then don't say anything, Mark replied, a small smile tugging at his lips. Just let me show you. That's all I ask. Let me show you that this, us, it can be real. The aides shifted again, sensing the moment was over, but Mark waved them away. He turned fully toward Lena, holding out his hand, not a symbol of power, not a gesture of authority, but an invitation. May I take you to dinner? Not as a CEO, not as a billionaire, but as the man who needed kindness and found it in you. Lena hesitated, taking in everything, the cold night, the warmth of soup, the quiet moments of trust, the revelation of who he really was. And then, slowly, she reached for his hand. Yes, she said softly, a smile breaking across her face. Yes, I'll go with you. Mark's eyes lit up, and for a fleeting moment, the world beyond the apartment seemed to vanish. Here, two people connected across the boundaries of wealth, power, and circumstance, bound together by a single, unremarkable night that neither of them would ever forget. Later, as he led her to the car waiting below, a sleek, black vehicle that gleamed in the morning light, Mark glanced at her and whispered, "Thank you, Lena, for trusting me, for seeing me." She smiled back, feeling an unshakable truth settle in her chest. That sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness can ripple outward, touching lives in ways that no one could ever imagine. And as they drove into the city, leaving the rain and quiet apartment behind, Lena realized this was only the beginning. For both of them, everything had changed.